All
All
right.
right. This is the Domestic
Man.
Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Slug. We got a great show for you today. We got another special guest coming on to talk some Bulls. We're going to do a little recap of the NFL, little quick hits on some fantasy football stuff. Thank God it was the Bears bye week this week. But Dan, start us off. What are you drinking?
So I have we've had him on before. We've actually had the co-founder on here as well to talk about the company. It's Epic Brewing. So we had Clayton LeBlanc on here not too long ago. And I got their Zweckel beer. I had to look up how to pronounce that. But it's their 5-year anniversary beer that they're celebrating for their 5th year anniversary of being a brewery. And the kind of description on it says it's a symphony of malt, hops, and yeast playing together in harmony. The dry hopped and unfiltered lager carries bright aromas of lemon zest, fresh cut grass, and honeydew melon. And right off the bat, it's different. I'll say that it's different.
You get the grass notes in there?
A little bit, a little grassy. And then it's unfiltered. So if I were to pour this in a glass, it'd be very cloudy, you know? So, but not bad. And always got to shout out Epic and, congrats to those guys for 5 years. What about you?
Yeah, that's awesome. So I have the brewery here is Foreign Exchange Brewing Company. It's out in Aurora. It's about 45-minute drive outside the city. They focus on small batch, experimental, and wood-aged ales and have been brewing since 2016. They're currently brewing out of Church Street's brewing facility in Itasca. Recently purchased a spot in downtown Aurora, though, and they're in the process of remaking that space, obtaining equipment and all that good stuff. The owner and master brewer, Ricky Cervantes, expects them to be up and running in Aurora by next spring, supposedly. So that should be a cool spot when that opens. But the beer I have here is called Evolutionary State. It's an English style barley wine ale. It's conditioned on maple syrup and Madagascar vanilla beans. It's 12.5%. So it is a doozy. I'll probably be drunk by the end of this episode. But it gets a 4.11 on Untapped. It's, as you'd imagine, pretty strong. But very sweet, strong flavors of maple syrup and almost like a slight whiskey taste at the end. I'm a big fan of this. I like it. I'm usually not a really dark beer person, but this one being as sweet as it is, I'm a big fan. So check that out and check out Foreign Exchange Brewing Company when they open in the spring.
All right, man. It's getting like that dark beer kind of season in Chicago right now, isn't it? I saw a couple flurries were happening already.
Oh yeah, we already got some snow, so it's
Wonderful.
dark beer season, definitely.
And then before we welcome on our guests, I just want to make sure that this Saturday, actually, if you go to Epic in their Vista location up here in San Diego, they're having their anniversary party this Saturday. So they'll be having commemorative steins, special releases, and things like that. So go ahead and give them a visit if you're in the area. But I'm super excited to bring on our guest here today. He is Matt Peck. He is the co-host, Matt Peck, excuse me, the co-host of Locked On Bulls. He's also been on Bulls Outsiders on NBC Sports Chicago, and he's written for Sports Mockery. And you can find him on Twitter, where I follow him and enjoy his content at Bulls_Peck. Matt, thanks for being on the show today.
Dan, Evan, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Great, man. Really appreciate you coming on. How are you?
Hanging in there, man. Enjoying this 10-4 start to the Bulls season.
Not bad at all. Yeah, it's been wonderful, actually. Before we get into this team, we kind of just want to hear a little bit about you and tell us kind of like how'd your fandom of a Bulls fan begin? If you remember like a team, or is there a moment in time where you're like, yes, this is the team that I'm following for the rest of my life?
Yeah, so I grew up in the west suburbs of Chicago, grew up in Glen Ellen, and grew up as a Chicago suburbs kid in the 90s. And I was pretty young for the first three-peat, but, I was in grade school for MJ's foray into baseball with the Birmingham Barons. And then, I mean, the media storm, even as whatever, I like an 8 or 9-year-old kid, I remember all of the hype around Chicago with the MJ. Is he coming back? Is he coming back? And then, yes, he's back. And I remember going to the United Center, and like my parents got me an MJ 45 jersey, and we watched MJ and the Bulls, play a game. And I was like, from that moment on, I was hooked. And then, the playoff disappointment of losing to Orlando in 95 only just burned that fire more passionately. And then when we brought Rodman in before the 95-96 season, I was like, oh, this is it. I was trying to convince my parents to let me dye my hair with like the red hair and the black bull logo on the back of Rodman. Like I wanted to look like Dennis Rodman. I was obsessed with that team from that moment on. And, you know, good times and bad, but you know, the second three-peat defined my childhood.
So did you have a collection with those Dennis Rodman hair changing color, like McDonald's cups that every kid had in the 90s?
Oh yeah. And like all of the different cups. I also tried to collect as many Dennis Rodman cards as I could with his hair in different styles and colors and designs. And yeah, I mean, I convinced my parents to let me get his first autobiography, Bad as I Want to Be, where he's like posing nude on the motorcycle with just basketball over his crotch. And my parents were like, "You're 10. I'm pretty sure you shouldn't be reading whatever is in this autobiography." But I was like, "Come on!" They finally caved and let me get it. And I was like, I wasn't a big reader as a kid, but I was like, now this book I will read.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you become this Bulls personality? I guess, how did you get started with all that?
So I actually, I went to school to study acting. You know, I was really into theater in high school, went to a small college out in Ohio where I was a drama major. I even spent a junior year abroad in London studying Shakespeare in particular. And then between Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York for the first 5 or 6 years out of college, bounced around, you know, being a poor starving actor, doing mostly stage stuff, some comedy, some sketch comedy, improv, plays, and, you know, was like waiting tables to pay the rent and stuff. And I enjoyed that life, but I kind of got to a point in my mid to late 20s. I was living in New York at the time, and I was like, man, do I really want to be an actor for the rest of my life? Like, I don't know if I love it that much. I don't know if I'm good enough at it. I don't know if I want to wait for like that big break that might never come. And meanwhile, as a Chicago native, like I enjoyed leaving Chicago and experiencing living in other cities, but I missed Chicago. And Chicago sports teams were the one thing that always kept me feeling somewhat attached to home. Like my brother and I found a Bears bar in New York that we would go to every Sunday for watching Bears football. And, you know, we would go and like watch the Derek, Taj, Joakim, like Marco Bellinelli Bulls beating the Celtics on a random Tuesday night at some random bar in Brooklyn or whatever. And like, I was fully, you know, becoming immersed in Chicago sports fandom, even more so than I was as a kid, because I was missing Chicago. And while all of my actor friends were like going out on cattle call auditions and doing this and doing that and going to this workshop, I was just at the bar watching Chicago sports, or you know, like at home with League Pass, or at home with NFL, like watching my teams. And at one point, one of my good friends said to me, he was like, "Hey man, like, I hope you don't take this the wrong way. And I think you're a really good actor, but have you ever thought about like talking about sports for a living?" And my mind just went, what? So, you know, the ball kind of rolled from there with that idea. I ended up moving back home to Chicago, did a short internship at ESPN 1000. I worked with Jay Hood, got to know him, you know, got to meet some people. You know, that internship didn't turn into a job. I didn't expect it to. It's very competitive, but it gave me the motivation to just start doing my own stuff. So like I started an online podcast, just talking about all of my Chicago teams, and giving my takes. And then I, you know, picked up an opportunity here and there to do some freelance writing for some Chicago sports blogs and things like that. And then jumped on a podcast with my former Locked On host, Jordan Malley, who was doing a Bulls podcast and needed a new co-host. He and I took that and ran. A few months after we got together, Locked On Bulls needed new co-hosts, and I had an in from a former colleague at a Chicago sports blog who was doing Locked On Pistons. He put me in touch with the head of Locked On Network, and, you know, one thing led to another. And then, you know, a few years after that, I was like doing a Bulls post-game show on NBC. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that because I watched it and I enjoyed it. And you, Big Dave and John Saban, right? How did that was because it was after the post game. So it was like the post game. Mm-hmm. And if you just couldn't get enough Bulls content, like fans like me, you just love that you could like connect with fans that were also given a TV show. But how did that come about? Like, you pitched it? Did you audition? And then also, like, I want to know the ins and outs of like the green room. Were you like bumping shoulders with like Kendall Gill and like Will Perdue? And if you got any stories there, like, I want to know all about Bulls outsiders.
Yeah, it's fun, you know, and bless your heart and all the Bulls fans out there who, after, you know, watching their third consecutive 20-point loss and a 45-minute post-game show, were like, no, we want more Bulls coverage, which is what we were there to provide. It's crazy. But the concept actually started out in NBC Sports Bay Area, another one of the NBC Sports regional networks, doing Warriors Outsiders, which I think started up 2 years before they brought Bulls Outsiders on, because the Warriors were like, the talk of the sports world at that time. Like, they were bigger than life. They were the modern age late 90s Bulls when it came to media hype and fanfare. And they're like, there's no such thing as too much Warriors content right now. So a couple of Warriors bloggers got together at NBC Bay Area and just like created the show. It's like, okay, what about a post-game show from a fan's perspective instead of an analyst's perspective? And so that show did pretty well through its first couple of years. And then NBC Sports, execs, whoever the higher ups were like, okay, let's do this with some of our other networks. So simultaneous to us, they also launched Wizards Outsiders, Sixers Outsiders, and Blazers Outsiders. And so I was just approached, Jordan and myself, my Locked On co-host, were approached by the executive producer at NBC Sports Chicago, Kevin Anderson, who is now not only my former boss, but a good friend, and said, hey, there's this new show that we're going to start for this upcoming Bulls season. It's post-game coverage from a fan's perspective, by the fans, for the fans. We're reaching out to a handful of people that are, in and around the world of Bulls social media, Bulls podcasts, Bulls content, to gauge interest in coming in for this. And so it was sort of like a 3 or 4 tiered like audition process, where they had anybody who was interested send them like a 90-second clip of giving their take on the Jabari Parker signing. You give you a little refresher of where we were when this was happening. So I sent in this scathing 90-second clip about how much I hated the Jabari Parker signing. And then they narrowed the field down a little bit from there, and then brought in a handful of us for like screen tests at the NBC Sports Chicago studio, which is where I ended up meeting Big Dave and John for the first time, as well as a handful of other people that they brought in. Went through a few rounds of auditions and screen tests there in studio, and they settled on me, Big Dave, and John. And it was dream come true, dream job kind of moment. Like I wanted that gig so bad, because I thought that like it was right in my wheelhouse of what I can provide my fellow Bulls fans. And to the back end of your question, yes, we walked in on day one and we're like, they're gonna like stuff up, like it's gonna be like Harry Potter, like in the cupboard under the stairs, right? That's how they're gonna treat that. No, we were in the green room watching the games every single night with Kendall Gill, Will Perdue, Mark Shanowski. Like Horace Grant would come through for occasional guest spots. And then like even just like the other people who would come in for David Kaplan's Sports Talk live show before Bulls tip off and be his, like seeing Frank Thomas, seeing Dave Wanstatt, I like, all of these people that I was like, what am I doing here? And I just every single day walked in and was like, whatever you do, don't geek out, don't star stare, and don't embarrass yourself. And I failed more often than I succeeded.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. I want
as we mentioned, you're the co-host of the Locked On Bulls daily podcast. So what's that process like now, and how did you become the host of that again?
Right. So I was doing a lot of Bulls coverage for a blog at the time, and I was in like a thread, like a group DM on Twitter with, I don't know, 15 to 20 fringe Bulls content creators. And one of them was Jordan Malley, who had hit this podcast that he was doing called The Debatables. And I think it was for like Dash Radio Network or something. And he had a co-host, and that co-host had to step down. And so he just sent this message into our like Bulls Fringe Media Twitter DM group saying, I'm looking for a new co-host of the podcast. If you're interested, hit me up. I'll bring you on for a guest spot, and, we'll see if there's any, chemistry. So I came and did a guest appearance on his podcast. And, I think we both enjoyed it. I think we felt some chemistry out of the gate. And I think his audience responded to it and enjoyed that episode. And he ended up offering me the full-time, position as his permanent co-host. And I was at that time, like, I was just looking for any opportunity to continue my pursuit in a career in Chicago sports media. So of course I said yes. And then we did that podcast together for, I want to say 5 or 6 months, up until that opportunity I mentioned about a former colleague who was doing Locked On Pistons and caught wind through the grapevine at the Locked On Network that they needed a new host for the Bulls pod. and put me in touch with their head of their network, who said, hey, I listened to a couple episodes of this podcast you're doing about the Bulls on this other place. I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, but just do it for us at Locked On. So Jordan and I said, yeah. And, tomorrow is the 4-year anniversary of our first episode on Locked On Bulls. So
wow, that's awesome. Go. Congrats.
Yeah, check it out. Locked On Bulls. I got to rewind. What's it like watching and you were probably watching, this is what, 2017, 2018, pretty bad Chicago Bulls teams with two former like pros, Kendall Gill, Will Perdue. Can you give any, were you sworn to secrecy? Did you sign like a non-disclosure with like tables being punched or anything? Or?
I mean, I will tell you, like, there are certain stories that Kendall Gill told us while we were just sitting around watching the Bulls lose by 30 again, that I won't ever repeat. And not because Kendall Gill said, now you can't repeat this to anybody, but because I knew that I should not repeat this to anybody. But that dude has some stories from back in his playing days in the NBA. But I mean, for the most part, I think what Big Dave and John and I were struck by was just how chill and down to earth both Kendall Gill and Will Perdue were. I mean, and as a kid, like, and Will in particular, I wasn't a big U of I fan. I know there's a huge crossbreed of U of I fans and Bulls fans here in and around Chicago and the state of Illinois who are like obsessed with Kendall Gill, like Big Dave. My guy, Big Dave, loves Kendall Gill and was like, I can't believe that like Kendall Gill is my friend now because he's a big Flying Illini guy. But as a kid who was first and foremost growing up watching sports, being exposed to the Bulls, like Will Perdue, like I was watching Will Perdue play center for the Bulls, like face mask and all when I was a kid. Like he was in commercials. He was like, I was watching Will Perdue play basketball in my living room every night. And then I walk into the green room and, I'm 6'4". I'm a pretty tall dude. And I walk in and I look up at Will Perdue like, oh my God, how freaking tall? Monster, dwarfs me. I mean, like you could parachute out of a plane with a pair of that dude's slacks. He is a humongous human being. But it was always a joy to just sit there and watch games with them because you got stories from their playing days and you got their wealth of experience and knowledge of the game when people like Dave and John and myself who have spent their entire lives watching NBA basketball and like you guys, probably also, you think you know the game. You think you know the game pretty well. And then you hear people like that talk and you're like, oh, I don't know a goddamn thing.
Be a fly on the wall there would be great.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about this team now. This current team. We talked about it right at the beginning. Awesome to watch lately. They beat the Lakers last night. They moved to 10-4. They beat the Clippers right before that. Is it safe to say that the Bulls own LA? Can we say that?
I'm not going there. That was the Bulls' first win over the Lakers since I want to say 2015. So it had been a minute.
Yeah.
And I am sticking with cautiously optimistic with this Bulls start right now. I love the fact that they're 10-4. I love the fact that they beat the Clippers and the Lakers on back-to-back nights in the Staples Center. But I mean, the Lakers won a title 2 years ago. The Bulls haven't been to the conference finals since 10 years ago and counting. No. And don't get me wrong. Did I absolutely throw some shade and at the official Lakers Twitter handle after the win last night saying, hey, bring LeBron back to the United Center for the rematch. Maybe it'll be a fair fight. I absolutely did because I'm petty and cynical like that. But am I ready to declare that the Bulls own LA? No, not quite.
I had to throw it out there. I had to ask.
Yeah. So do you think the Bulls are, where they're at right now, obviously 10-4, they're just way up, going above everyone's expectations, I think, at the beginning of the season. Do you think they're maxing out their talent? Do you think there's still room to grow here? I guess, where do you think this team's going to be mid-season?
I think there's absolutely room to grow when you think about some of the factors of who hasn't been on the floor and who has been on the floor and not been playing like themselves. And I'm referring to Kobe White and Vooch in that order. We just saw Kobe make his season debut against the Lakers on Monday. And he was an afterthought. Lonzo had a monster game. DeMar had a monster game. And the Bulls cruise, Kobe played 11 minutes and took 2 shots and didn't do anything. So that's not a bad thing. I think the fact that we're slowly going to see Kobe reintegrate himself into Billy Donovan's rotation and provide some of that scoring punch that the Bulls' second half of the rotation has been missing through their first 14 games is going to continue to improve this Bulls squad and what they can do. And the same thing with Vooch. Like, I can't believe the percentage of Bulls fans who through 12 games were like, oh, Vooch trade was a mistake. This guy sucks. Can we trade him yet? I was like, guys, he's in a shooting slump. Like maybe he's got the yips. I don't know what's going on. He's missing some bunnies. He's missing some elbow jumpers that he normally makes. He's not hitting his three. Calm down. And I think between the tail end of the Dallas game and then the following game, you slowly saw him kind of pulling himself out of that rut. He made some big shots and awful timing with the COVID health and safety protocols. But when all of a sudden Vooch was taken out of that starting lineup in that Golden State game, and you say, okay, Tony Bradley, you're up, you realize just how much Vooch provides, even if his shots aren't falling, with the spacing, with the high IQ passing, some of the simple safety net stuff where whether it's, Lonzo or DeMar or Zach handling the ball, a simple pick and roll scenario with Vooch can take the pressure off of them as creators. Vooch's IQ and ability to come out of those little, top of the free throw line screens where he'll swing a pass to the weak side and hit an open 3-point shooter. Tony Bradley provides none of that kind of stuff. So if Vooch comes back from, missing this road trip and is essentially ready to go when they get home and play the Knicks at the end of this week and can pick up where he left off and rediscover the Vooch who's an all-star caliber scorer in this league, you throw Kobe White into that second unit, absolutely there is room to grow. And then also remember, this is a entirely different roster. Zach LaVine and Kobe White are the only remnants of the roster that AK and Eversley inherited. And as Billy Donovan said during training camp, like, it's going to take some time for this team to gel, especially on the offensive end. They've had some impressive offensive nights. They've had some less so impressive offensive nights. But between that and Vooch stepping up his game and getting Kobe back, absolutely there's room to grow.
Yeah, I got 100% confidence that Vooch is going to get back to form. Kobe is somebody that I'm one of those people that's like, is this going to be the right fit? Is he going to be one of those guys that can provide that spark off the bench that everybody knows that he can do? But does that fit with this team? I know they're going to need that. I'm just still skeptical because I haven't seen it yet. And last night didn't really help much, I guess, in that regard. But he only played 11 minutes, like you said, no points,
Right.
one board. But yeah, so we got to. It's going to take some time, I think. Here, what do you think about Caruso moving to the starting lineup, though?
I think it makes perfect sense. As much as I love Javonte Green, and holy crap, do I love Javonte Green. Honestly, I think some Bulls fans were upset that we let Tice go. And I was like, really? You couldn't just sign that contract instead of doing the sign and trade with Houston? Because yeah, Tice is a solid guy.
Love
and when
Tice.
you look at the Bulls void of just like muscle and toughness and size, defensively in their front court, I get that, especially when you had to throw Thad to San Antonio to get DeMar. Like, it kind of doubled up on itself as losing both of those front court pieces. But Javonte Green was the sneaky part of that trade with the Celtics, and there's a reason he's still here. That being said, Caruso, as Donovan pointed out after he made that switch, provides spacing that Javonte Green does not. And after they got cooked by the Warriors in that Friday night game, Donovan also mentioned, look, Caruso's perimeter defense is just otherworldly. And so I think he wanted to get off to a strong start, pairing Caruso and Lonzo with that perimeter defense, in game 2 of their road trip. And you saw it more against the Lakers on Monday. That pairing of Caruso and Lonzo as perimeter defense, you could see both of those guys earn all defensive team nods this season. And I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. So you also get that energy and that punch that Javonte provides back into your bench unit, as opposed to having to put that guy in your starting unit. Because guess what? Javonte or Caruso, either way, you're going to be playing small ball with that starting lineup. And I think right now, until Vooch gets back, starting Caruso makes plenty of sense to me.
Yeah, the overall defensive effort yesterday, I was blown away with Anthony Davis. I was like, okay, this is gonna be a tough matchup. We're undersized, and just seeing the rotation, seeing Anthony Davis get the ball and 3 Bulls right in his area, super impressed by that. And I think it speaks to coaching. And so with Caruso going in the starting lineup, we had Steph Noe last week, formerly of The Athletic, on the Talk Bulls, and he predicted, or he was advocating for Caruso being in the starting lineup. And then boom, he is in the starting lineup that weekend. So I'm asking you, Matt Peck, make a prediction that is going to come true over the weekend or next week, so we can keep this trend going of inviting guests on, having them make a prediction, and then it becomes true. What's going to happen in a week's time in the Chicago Bulls team?
Ooh, that's interesting. First of all, shout out Steph Noe. Love that guy. He and I are sort of Twitter friends. We've never actually met face to face, but he provided me with some endless laughter in our DM chat back in the He Who Must Not Be Named days when we were doing Outsiders. About a certain back and forth he had with the Bulls' former head coach having an issue with some of the stuff Steph was writing, and then was basically demanding that Steph give him the receipts, and then Steph gave him said receipts, and then their conversation went silent, which wow. I thoroughly enjoyed. But truly, I mean, Steph does amazing work. He has a Substack now with free Bulls content. Chip him a few bucks if you can, because the guy is incredible.
Yep. That's great.
As to the prediction, I think that basically until Vooch gets back, this is the starting lineup you're going to stick with. So between that and the rest of Donovan's rotation, interestingly, we'll see how he gets Kobe in, because I think Billy Donovan really likes Ayo Dosunmu and doesn't want to take minutes away from that kid. So, I won't make a prediction there. I'll make this prediction. The Bulls are a surprisingly scrappy, aggressive defensive team. You saw the way that they aggravated Anthony Davis despite their lack of size against the Lakers on Monday night. We also know that the reigning MVP, Jokic, kind of has a little bit of a short fuse. So when the Bulls play the Nuggets later this week, I believe it's a Friday game, my prediction is that there's going to be some kind of scuffle where somebody gets a hard foul on Jokic, or somebody plays Jokic a little too close to the chest and he doesn't like it. I'm not saying it's going to be a repeat of Jokic versus the Morris brothers or anything like that, but I have a feeling that Bulls Nuggets game Friday night is going to get, let's say, 90s basketball-ish on more than one occasion.
Love it. You heard it here first.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that prediction. So, just watching your last few episodes here, I know you guys have been talking a lot about DeRozan and who hasn't, if you're watching the Bulls. Do you think he's a legitimate MVP candidate? I mean, he scored 35 plus in back-to-back games now, third in the league in points per game behind only Durant and Curry, and he's averaging less turnovers than both those guys and playing more minutes than both of them. So I'll leave that to you.
I think you just answered your own question, Evan. Yes, absolutely.
Trying to persuade you, I guess. You already know.
He is in the conversation. Is he leading the conversation? I don't think you can confidently say that when you think about where Steph Curry and the Warriors are right now, which, we're going to wrap this up and I'm going to go catch the end of that Warriors-Nets game on TNT. But the fact that DeMar is even, and I saw, it was NBA's Twitter put out earlier this week their preliminary top 5 MVP candidates based on the first, month of the season. DeRozan was 5th. DeRozan was in the top 5 of the NBA's MVP candidates. And this is a guy who plenty of experts, giant air quotes, referred to as the worst offseason move was DeRozan sign and trade to Chicago. When you look at what he's doing with his efficiency scoring, when you look at the fact that, he's still no stellar defensive player, but he is, at least as his teammate Zach LaVine has, because of the arrivals of guys like Caruso and Lonzo Ball, at least upped his effort on the defensive end, his intensity, his engagement on the defensive end. That in the NBA, effort and intensity on the defensive end counts for 60 to 65%, if you ask me. So even if you're not a stellar defensive player, you can make that improvement, as I think DeMar has through their first 14 games. He's even knocking down 38% of his 3-point attempts. Not a high volume, but he's knocking down threes. You rattled off the scoring. You rattled off the other MVP candidates. The fact that he's turning the ball over less than they are, getting to the free throw line a ton. If the Bulls surprise a whole bunch of people and end up somehow stealing one of the top 2 seeds in the East, and DeMar does this all season, you got to talk about him being a top 5 MVP finisher.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. If you look at some of the stats for the team too, it just reflects DeMar as a player. Field goal percentage was 6. We know he loves the mid-range game. 3 points attempt, we're one of the last teams on there, but we're also shooting at a high clip. We're fourth in the NBA at 3-point percentage, and then free throw percentage first. DeMar gets to the line. So it's cool to see the team kind of going around his personality and his style of play as well. We'll get one more question in here. We'll let you go. I'm sure you're watching it as well with, the how you watch NBA basketball, your TNT basketball. Tonight, Shaq said the Bulls, and I'm sure you saw it on Twitter or whatever, the Bulls have what it takes to be a title contender. Is he just giving that because of the recent LA trip and that's what people watch it, they focus on those games? Or do you think he's actually serious and he believes it? And then do you believe it as well?
I tell you what, I used to hate Inside the NBA on TNT back when I was like in my 20s and I loved NBA basketball and I really wanted good basketball analysis from the people who were giving me my pregame shows, my halftime shows, my postgame shows. And for that reason, I hated Inside the NBA on TNT. And then, I don't know, at some point after several years of watching that show, I just figured out, oh, this isn't about smart basketball analysis. This is an entertainment show. So if Shaq says, oh, the Bulls, they're a real threat, or like Charles Barkley has been saying all season so far out of the gate, like the Bulls had, I think, in my opinion, one of the best offseasons, one of my favorite offseasons. They're one of the most improved teams, if not the most improved team in the NBA from last season to this season. You can, as a Bulls fan, smile at that. You can be appreciative and thankful of the fact that they are now part of the national conversation again. The fact that even when the Bulls aren't one of the teams playing as a part of the TNT doubleheader coverage, that they come up in conversation, because it's been a long time since Bulls fans have gotten to enjoy that element of what it is to be a Bulls fan, which is big market team. People talk about them. If they're halfway decent, people talk about them. Do I care when it gets down to the nitty gritty of if Shaq thinks it's true, is it true? Or if Chuck thinks this, then is this that? No. Embrace it for the entertainment that it is, but never, ever put any stock in anything they say about their predictions and their takes, and certainly don't put any money behind it.
All right, so Bulls not winning a championship this year, huh?
I tell you what, if they
Something
get to the second round of the playoffs, I will be more than happy and optimistic about the future, because we are in a 5-year playoff drought right now. And I mean, to vault from where we've been languishing in a dirty rat-infested basement of NBA punchlines to now being 10-4 and getting talked about on TNT when we're not even playing, dude, I'll take that all day.
I agree. All right. He is Matt Peck. It is at Bulls_Peck on Twitter. He's also the host of Locked On Bulls. You can find them doing daily episodes anywhere you find podcasts. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks
Dan,
so much,
Evan,
man.
great chatting with you guys. Appreciate the invite. Happy to come back anytime.
Sounds good, man. Thanks.
All right. Thanks again to Matt Peck. Again, he's on Twitter at Bulls_Peck, Peck. Really fun chat with him. Definitely knows his stuff about the Bulls. So, check him out for sure. And listen to Locked On. Let's change gears over to the Bears now. They're playing the Ravens this week. They were on bye last week. Like I said, thankfully, we didn't have to watch the Bears this week. It was a nice break. I always enjoy the Bears bye week, at least lately. But they play the Ravens this week. I think this is going to be a tough one. You got any thoughts going into this game here?
Only thought is that, maybe, the bye was nice, but I also I missed watching Justin Fields. Like, I kind of wanted to see him progress again and see another game where he gets better and has like some impressive throws. So that's my one thing for this game. I think it's gonna be physical. Hopefully our offensive line is starting to get a little healthier now with, Jenkins is back as well. I just want to watch Justin Fields again. That's it. That's all I want to do. That's all I want for Christmas this year is a healthy, good Justin Fields.
And a healthy line too. Tevin Jenkins should be back pretty soon. I think they're saying he's about to start practicing, right? So that'll be good to get him back, see what we got in him, second round pick. Let's take a look at this week's games. I'll run through them real quick. What's your record so far, Dan? I know last week was a rough week.
Another one. Yeah. So the week before 6-8, this week 6-7-1. There was, yikes. I mean, I guess I tied because the team's tied. So I put that in the tie column. That was the Lions and Pittsburgh game, I believe. They tied. But yeah, 6-7-1 overall record, 88-61-1. I've kind of been in a slump. So hopefully this week 11, Bears are back. We kind of bust out of it.
Yeah. All right. Let's start with the Thursday game. Pats at Falcons.
Patriots, man. I hate that they're good, and I got them last week too, and they killed the Browns. Just you can't go against that team. It sucks.
Yeah, the Falcons are reeling too. They just got stomped by Dallas. Saints at Eagles.
Philly. Let's go Philly.
Okay. Dolphins at Jets.
Dolphins, man. 2 a time.
They just beat the Ravens. Washington at Panthers.
Cam, Panthers. That team's going to be reinvigorated. Having that personality at quarterback and just like that captain leader, I think they're going to be a little reinvigorated.
Yeah, and Washington just lost Chase Young as well. So I think that's a big loss. Colts at Bills.
That's a good game. Colts at Bills. Let's keep it going with Buffalo, though. Let's go Bills.
All right. Lions at Browns.
They didn't lose. You're right. I said they were going to win. They didn't lose. Lions at Browns. You got to go Cleveland. A lot of pressure on that team right now to come out with a win.
49ers at Jags.
Niners. They looked impressive on Monday night.
Texans at Titans.
Titans
8-2. Sneaky good team. Packers at Vikings.
Packers at Vikings. Rodgers is 2 weeks removed of that COVID stuff. Let's go Packers.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a close one. But I think the Packers should pull it out. Ravens at Bears.
Bears.
All right.
Every game. Bears.
I like it. Bengals at Raiders.
Bengals. Has nothing to do with me trading for Joe Mixon this week.
That should be a fun one as well. Hopefully a lot of Jamar Chase. Cardinals at Seahawks.
I thought Kyler was going to come back last week. That's why I picked him, but he didn't. But I think he'll be back this week. Russ is also back, but he looked pretty rusty. So let's go Arizona. Let's go Cardinals. Healthy Kyler.
Okay. Cowboys at Chiefs.
Chiefs.
All right. Steelers at Chargers.
I was going to say San Diego again. Chargers. LA.
All right. And then the Giants at Bucks is the Monday night game.
Primetime Brady. Bucks.
Bucks, man. They looked terrible this week.
Yeah.
That was a weird one. A couple weird games this week, but there's your week 11 picks.
Yeah, hopefully it turns out a little better than last. And, after the picks, we always go into our next segment, which is Waiver Wire Wednesday. Who we got?
Love to hear it. All right, so let's start off at the QB position. As you mentioned, Cam Newton is back. He's 17% owned, so he's pretty much available on every waiver wire. He plays Washington this week. As I mentioned, no Chase Young, so I like Cam Newton pickup. Mac Jones, Patriots. We talked about how Atlanta's reeling after that big loss. I think that's another good pickup, good streamer. He's only 29% owned, so a couple good QB streamers there. AJ Dillon is the top running back ad if available. He's 73% owned, so he's probably not out there. But he definitely benefits the most from the Aaron Jones injury. Jones should be out. They said 1 to 2 weeks, but I'm expecting him to be out 2. And then week 13, they have their bye. So he'll probably be back week 14. So you got a 2-week running back there probably in Dillon if he's available. Ramondre Stevenson, though, what a game for that guy. 2 touchdowns, went over 100 rushing. Also got some work in the passing game. Damian Harris was out. I don't think he's going to clear concussion protocol in time for Thursday's game, but keep an eye on that. If he doesn't, Stevenson should have another big game against Atlanta. Dante Foreman, I mentioned him last week as a deep league ad. He was 0% owned, I believe, at the time. Now he's only 6% owned. But he played the most snaps at running back and looks the most explosive, which I don't think is saying much, but I think he's best looking running back in Tennessee. So worth the pickup there. Mark Ingram, we mentioned last week too. He's 75% owned, probably not out there, but Kamara's banged up. He's a great start if Kamara doesn't play. Wayne Gallman is a deep league guy. I'm talking about this week. He's 1% owned. He had 15 rushes for 55 yards. Cordero Patterson's hurt. Don't think he's going to play this week. Mike Davis is just Mike Davis. He stinks. So I think Wayne Gallman could take over here. The amount of rushes he got could be because of game flow because they were out of it. and they just, put the third stringer in there to run the game out. But he also, looked better than Mike Davis. So who knows? Deep league stash. Moving over to wide receivers, we have Elijah Moore, had another touchdown catch. He's only 51% owned still. Zach Wilson might be coming back this week, but Elijah's gotten double-digit points the last 4 weeks. So I think he's a solid pickup, especially in PPR formats. Christian Kirk has looked like the best wide receiver in Arizona. He's 75% owned, though, might not be out there. And then a couple other wide receivers I'd look for: Kenny Galladay, 52% owned; Sterling Shepard, 34% owned. I think I like Shepard more than Galladay. Both are good bets for targets, though. Tony's another guy you could look for too. All of them play Tampa Bay this week, who's been very vulnerable against the pass. I think Galladay will play for sure. I think he's healthy. I think Tony's also healthy. So I think those two will be out there. Shepard is probably going to be a game time decision coming back from a quad injury. We'll see if he plays. But I think they're all decent streamers this week if they're out there. Marcus Johnson is a deep league wide receiver I'd look for. He's 1% owned. He's a wide receiver in Tennessee, had 5 catches for 100 yards against the Saints this week with Julio out for at least a couple more games. He's a decent streamer. And then the tight end, Pat Freiermuth, I mentioned last week, he's still only 59% owned. 6+ targets in 4 straight games. Dan Arnold, another good name, 7 targets in 3 straight. Both those guys getting a lot of work. I would look to pick them up if you need a tight end.
There it is. That's your waiver wire Wednesday, man. Go ahead, help out your fantasy team. Listen to this every Tuesday. You can hear Evan's advice on who to pick up on that waiver wire. All right. Well, thanks again to our guest, Matt Peck, coming on. Really enjoyed talking Bulls with him. For Evan Bierman, I'm Dan Slowick. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast, and our website, domesticdraft.com. And you can watch our shows on YouTube. Just go ahead and search up Domestic Draft and drop us a subscription. All right. Thanks again for listening, man. Cheers.
Peace.